Janet stares at her phone in disbelief at her sister. In-law's social media post. Her entire in-law family smiling at a luxury resort in Maui, the trip her husband Greg claimed was canceled due to budget issues. 3 days ago, he'd texted asking for $2,800 for an urgent business expense. Now everything makes sense. 10 years of marriage, of working 80-hour weeks at her accounting firm to support his business ventures, of believing his excuses. The family vacation wasn't the first lie, but it would definitely be the last. I met Greg during my junior year of college. I was the serious accounting major with a 5-year plan, and he was the charismatic business student with dreams bigger than the sky. When he talked about his future ventures, his eyes would light up with such conviction that you couldn't help but believe every word. That was 12 years ago. Now, at 32, I sometimes catch myself looking at him while he sleeps, wondering when the man I married disappeared. Our beautiful 4-bedroom home in the Seattle suburbs projects success to anyone who visits. The marble countertops in the kitchen, the designer furniture in our living room, the carefully manicured garden visible through floor to ceiling windows, all of it screams accomplishment. But appearances can be deceiving. What our visitors don't see is that I work 80-hour weeks at Patterson & Blake, one of Seattle's top accounting firms. They don't know that every luxurious item in our home was purchased with my bonuses while Greg chased his next breakthrough opportunity. "This one is different, Janet," he'd say, eyes wide with excitement. "This app will revolutionize how people manage their fitness routines. We just need another $20,000 for development." And I would nod, transfer the money, and watch another venture slowly collapse over the next 6 months. Greg is 34, handsome, with a smile that still makes my heart skip when he directs it at me. We decided early in our marriage not to have children. "Let's build our empire first," he'd suggested. "We have plenty of time for kids later," I agreed, throwing myself into my career, believing we were building something meaningful together. Last Tuesday, I was working late at the office when my colleague Amanda dropped a stack of mail on my desk. "This was delivered to the front desk for you," she said with a puzzled expression. "Isn't your home address on file?" I glanced at the envelope, an elegant cream-colored invitation with gold lettering addressed to Greg and Janet Wilson. The return address showed Greg's parents' home in Portland. "Thanks," I murmured, sliding a letter opener under the flap. Inside was an invitation to the Wilson family's quarterly reunion, this one scheduled at his parents' lake house next month. My hands trembled slightly as I read it. Quarterly reunion? In the 10 years we'd been married, I'd never once heard about regular family gatherings. Greg always told me his family was scattered across the country and rarely got together, except for major holidays, and even those we usually missed because of Greg's business commitments. The invitation mentioned looking forward to seeing us as always, and a handwritten note from Greg's mother expressed how much she had enjoyed our conversation at the Christmas gathering. The Christmas gathering we had supposedly missed because Greg had a severe case of the flu. When Greg came home that night, I showed him the invitation without accusation, simply curious about the discrepancy. His face darkened immediately. "Where did you get that?" "It was delivered to my office." He snatched it from my hands, skimming the contents before crumpling it into a ball. "My family is toxic, Janet. You know this. They've never supported my business goals. Always judging, always criticizing. I've been protecting you from them. But they seem to think we've been attending their gatherings," I said carefully. Greg ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his tell when he was constructing a story. "My mother has early-stage dementia. She gets confused about who attends these things. Dad doesn't have the heart to correct her, so they send invitations to everyone as if we're all one big happy family." The explanation was so specific, so laden with emotional weight, that questioning it would make me seem heartless. How could I challenge a son protecting his wife from the pain of his mother's declining health? "I'm sorry," I whispered, feeling guilty for doubting him. You should have told me. Greg's expression softened as he pulled me into a hug. I didn't want to burden you with it. You work so hard already. That night, I lay awake long after Greg fell asleep, replaying the conversation in my mind. Something didn't add up, but I pushed the doubt away. This was my husband, my partner. If I couldn't trust him, what did that say about the past decade of my life? The next morning, I committed to working even harder at the firm, securing more clients, earning larger bonuses. If Greg's family situation was as complicated as he claimed, the least I could do was ensure our financial security while he navigated those emotional waters. I never imagined that by accepting his explanation, I was stepping deeper into a web of lies that would eventually cost me over $100,000 and 10 years of my life. 3 months after the invitation incident, Greg burst into the house one evening with a level of enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. "Janet! Amazing news," he announced, dropping his laptop bag and wrapping me in a tight embrace. "Mom and Dad have organized a full family reunion in Maui. They've invited everyone, all the siblings, cousins, even great Aunt Patty is flying in from Florida." I set down the financial reports I'd been reviewing and stared at him. "Your parents? I thought you said—" I know, he interjected, his eyes bright with what seemed like genuine emotion. "Mom's new medication has been working wonders. The doctors say the early symptoms we saw might have been stress, related after all, not dementia. Dad called personally to invite us." He grabbed my hands. "This could be a fresh start, Janet. A chance to rebuild relationships with my family." The sudden reversal confused me, but Greg's happiness was infectious. If his parents were doing better, who was I to question this opportunity for healing? "When is it?" I asked, mentally reviewing my work calendar. 3 weeks from now. 7 days at the Grand Wailea Resort." He pulled out his phone, showing me photos of an opulent oceanfront property with multiple infinity pools and lush tropical gardens. "They've booked rooms for everyone. All we need to cover is our flights." 3 weeks' notice for a week. Long vacation was an enormous ask given my position at Patterson and Blake. We were heading into tax season, with several major corporate clients requiring my personal attention. Yet seeing Greg so animated about reconnecting with his family, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. "I'll talk to the partners tomorrow," I promised. The conversation with my managing partner was exactly as difficult as I'd anticipated. 3 weeks from now? During Franklin Industries' audit, Martin removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Janet, you know how crucial this period is." "I understand the timing is terrible," I acknowledged. "But this is important for my husband's family. I can work remotely for urgent matters, and I'll put in extra hours before and after to ensure nothing falls behind." After 20 minutes of negotiation, Martin reluctantly agreed, but his parting words carried a clear warning. "The firm's flexibility only stretches so far, Janet. Don't make this a habit." For the next 2 weeks, I worked 16-hour days, preparing detailed handover notes for colleagues who would cover my clients in my absence. Greg and I spent evenings discussing what activities we might enjoy in Maui, researching local restaurants, planning sunset walks on the beach. He seemed genuinely excited to introduce me to family members I'd never met despite our years of marriage. "Tyler's going to love you," he said one night, referring to his younger brother. "He's the family rebel, but he's got a good heart. And my sister Amy has 2 kids now. You'll finally get to meet your niece and nephew." The night before we were supposed to finalize our flight bookings, Greg came home late. I was in bed reviewing documents when he entered our bedroom, his shoulders slumped, expression somber. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately setting aside my laptop. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "The reunion's canceled. Dad called. Apparently several family members are having financial difficulties right now. They decided to postpone rather than have some people missing." Disappointment washed over me. "That's too bad. Maybe we could still go? Just the 2 of us? I've already arranged the time off." Greg shook his head. "Money's tight right now with the app development costs. It would be irresponsible to spend on a luxury vacation. He reached for my hand. You should take the time to catch up at work instead. I know how stressed you've been about the Franklin audit. Despite my disappointment, his reasoning made sense. The firm would certainly appreciate my availability during this critical period. You're right, I said. There will be other opportunities. He kissed my forehead. Exactly. We'll plan something special. Just us. Once my current project secures funding. The next day, I called Martin to inform him I would be working during my previously requested vacation time after all. Though he didn't say it explicitly, his relief was palpable. The Franklin team will be glad to have you leading the audit, he said, which in Martin speak was high praise. What followed were the most intense workdays I'd experienced in years. I practically lived at the office, often sleeping on the small couch in my private office, rather than making the 40-minute drive home. Greg was understanding about my absence, texting supportive messages, and handling household matters without complaint. Late Friday night, exhausted after an 18-hour workday, I logged into our joint bank account to pay our monthly bills, a responsibility that had always fallen to me given my financial background. The screen showed an unfamiliar balance, significantly lower than I expected. I frowned, scrolling through recent transactions. There it was, a withdrawal of $15,000 3 days earlier. The description simply read, "Cash withdrawal." My fatigue evaporated instantly. $15,000 was no small sum. It represented nearly 2 months of mortgage payments on our home. Why would Greg withdraw such an amount without discussing it with me? I called our bank's 24-hour customer service line, identified myself, and inquired about the transaction. Yes, Mrs. Wilson. That withdrawal was made in person at our downtown branch, the representative confirmed. The funds were withdrawn by Gregory Wilson at 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday. Did he mention the purpose of the withdrawal? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm afraid I don't have that information. Would you like to report this as an unauthorized transaction? I hesitated. No, that won't be necessary. Thank you. After hanging up, I immediately called Greg. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Need to talk to you about a bank withdrawal. Please call me. 3 hours passed with no response. At 2 in the morning, I finally drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. Perhaps there was a legitimate explanation. An investment opportunity that required cash. A vendor who wouldn't accept electronic payment. A surprise he was planning. When I arrived home, the house was dark. I checked our garage. Greg's car wasn't there. I entered through the front door and flipped on lights, moving from room to room, searching for any sign of what might necessitate a $15,000 withdrawal. Nothing seemed amiss. No major appliances had been replaced. No new furniture or electronics. I was in our home office, rifling through Greg's desk drawers for any clue, when my phone finally rang. Janet? It's 4 in the morning. What are you doing? Greg's voice sounded groggy but alert. Where are you? I countered. At Skylar's place. We were working late on the app, having a few beers. I crashed here rather than drive home. What's going on? Skylar was his latest business partner, a programmer I'd met only once at a networking event. $15,000, Greg. That's what's going on. You withdrew $15,000 from our account 3 days ago without telling me. The line went silent for a moment. Oh, that. There must be some mistake. I only withdrew $5,000 for the server costs I told you about last week. I spoke to the bank, Greg. It was $15,000. His tone shifted abruptly from confusion to anger. You're checking up on me now? Calling the bank to track my movements? What happened to trust, Janet? The sudden hostility caught me off guard. This isn't about trust. It's about financial transparency. We've always discussed large expenditures. Well, maybe if you weren't buried in work 24/7, we would have had that discussion. His voice rose. The money's for emergency repairs to the rental property. The tenant called about major water damage. I told you about this days ago, but you were too busy with your precious Franklin audit to listen. We didn't own a rental property. We had discussed investing in real estate but had never actually purchased an investment property. Yet Greg's conviction was so strong, his indignation so believable, that for a moment I questioned my own memory. What rental property, Greg? We don't own any investment properties. Another pause. The duplex in Bellevue. Janet, we closed on it 3 months ago. I have all the paperwork. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on your job that our life together is just background noise to you. I sat down at his desk, suddenly dizzy. Had I been so absorbed in work that I'd forgotten purchasing property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? It seemed impossible, yet Greg sounded so certain. I need to see the paperwork, I said finally. Fine, it's in the filing cabinet, 3rd drawer, under properties. I'm staying at Skylar's tonight. We'll talk when you've had some sleep and remember our actual lives. He hung up before I could respond. I immediately went to the filing cabinet and checked the 3rd drawer. There was no properties folder. I systematically checked every drawer, every folder. Nothing related to any property purchase. I returned to our bedroom, collapsed onto our bed, and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't yet see the full picture. The weekend passed in a blur of work and confusion. Greg returned home Saturday afternoon, apologized for his overreaction, and produced a folder of documents related to a duplex in Bellevue. The paperwork looked legitimate at first glance, complete with what appeared to be closing documents and a deed in both our names. I was too overwhelmed with the Franklin audit to examine them closely, filing them away to review later. The repairs are being handled now, Greg assured me. The water damage was worse than expected, which is why the costs were higher. I should have communicated better. His explanation seemed plausible. The documents looked real. Maybe I had been so consumed with work that I'd mentally checked off the property purchase as Greg's responsibility and filed it away in some overloaded corner of my brain. It had happened before with less significant matters. I understand, I said, though uncertainty lingered. Just please keep me in the loop moving forward. Sunday evening, Greg mentioned he was driving to Portland the next day to meet with his brother Tyler about a potential investment in the app. He's finally in a position to contribute financially, Greg explained. This could be the boost we need. I nodded absently. My attention focused on the spreadsheets illuminating my laptop screen. Give him my best, I said, making a mental note to look into the Bellevue property records when I had a moment. Just to confirm, Monday passed in a 14-hour workday. Tuesday was more of the same. By Wednesday night, the Franklin team had made significant progress, and I allowed myself to relax slightly, enjoying a glass of wine while scrolling through social media, something I rarely had time for during busy periods. A post from Amy Wilson appeared in my feed. I paused, wine glass halfway to my lips. Amy Wilson, Greg's sister. I'd never connected with Greg's family on social media. In fact, Greg had always maintained that his family was old, fashioned, and rarely used such platforms. Yet here was a profile for Amy Wilson, with over 800 posts and nearly 1,000 friends. I clicked on her name, curious what had prompted the platform's algorithm to suggest her to me. Her profile was public. The most recent post, shared just 3 hours earlier, showed a large group of people seated around a long table at what appeared to be an upscale restaurant. The caption read, "Family dinner night in paradise. So blessed to have everyone together for this special week. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for making it happen." My eyes moved methodically across the image, identifying faces based on the few family photos Greg had shared over the years. His mother, Patricia, his father, William, his younger sister, Amy, various cousins and aunts and uncles I'd never met. And there, at the center of the table, smiling broadly with a tropical drink in hand, was Greg. The timestamp on the photo indicated it had been taken that evening. The location tag read Lahaina, Maui. My hands began to shake so badly that I set down my wine glass to avoid spilling its contents. This wasn't an old photo. This wasn't a misunderstanding. The family reunion in Maui hadn't been canceled at all. Greg was there with every member of his family except his wife. I clicked through Amy's other recent posts, each one driving the knife deeper. Photos of the entire family at the beach. Videos of Greg participating in a resort, organized volleyball tournament. Pictures of everyone gathered for breakfast on a hotel balcony overlooking the ocean. All posted within the past 5 days, the exact duration of the supposedly canceled family trip. More disturbing than the photos themselves was a comment from Greg's mother on one of the images. "Thank you, Greg, for organizing everything so beautifully like always. These family gatherings mean the world to us. Like always." The room seemed to tilt as the implications crashed over me. This wasn't a one-time event. The quarterly family reunions were real. The Christmas gatherings were real. Greg had been attending them all along without me. For 10 years, he had been systematically excluding me from his family while concocting elaborate lies about family tensions, health issues, and canceled events. I sat in stunned silence for hours, scrolling through years of Amy's photos, finding Greg in countless family gatherings I knew nothing about. Birthdays, graduations, holidays occasions he had missed because of business trips and investor meetings. At 1 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text from Greg. "Need $2,800 for urgent business matter. Can you transfer to my personal account? We'll explain later." The audacity was breathtaking. There he sat in Maui, surrounded by family, asking me for money while I worked myself to exhaustion covering for his absence. I typed a reply with fingers that felt numb. "Ask your family." Seconds later, my phone exploded with calls. I declined each one, watching as text messages flooded in. "What are you talking about? Those pictures are old. You're misunderstanding everything. My family is toxic. I've been protecting you. Call me now." I silenced my phone and poured another glass of wine. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of believing I was building a life with someone who truly loved me. 10 years of financial support for businesses that never materialized. 10 years of exclusion from a family that apparently gathered regularly. How much money had disappeared into Greg's ventures over the decade? How much had I sacrificed time, energy, professional opportunities to support his dreams? And all the while, he had been living a parallel life without me. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that I couldn't even cry. Instead, I felt a cold clarity descending, a detached, analytical mindset that served me well during complex audits. It was time to conduct an audit of my own marriage. I called in sick to work the next day, something I had done only twice before in my 8 years at the firm. Martin's concern was evident in his voice. I had never missed a day during a major audit. "Take care of yourself, Janet," he said. "The team can manage for 24 hours. Once the call ended, I sat at our dining room table with a legal pad and my laptop, prepared to excavate the financial history of my marriage. As an accountant, I had always handled our official finances, mortgage payments, retirement contributions, tax filings, but Greg maintained separate accounts for his business ventures, with my regular contributions flowing into them. I started with our joint savings account, downloading 5 years of statements to track large withdrawals. The pattern emerged quickly. Significant transfers to Greg's business account preceding every supposed business trip, family emergency, or canceled family gathering. Next, I turned to our credit cards. We maintained a joint card for household expenses, but Greg also had 2 cards in his name alone. I knew the login information for all our accounts, although I rarely monitored his individual cards. That would change today. The transaction history painted a damning picture. Hotel charges in Portland, Seattle, and various vacation destinations coincided perfectly with family events I'd been told were canceled or non-existent. Flight purchases for Greg alone, when we had supposedly both been invited to gatherings. The most sickening discovery came when I referenced his credit card statements with Amy's social media timeline. For our 10th anniversary, a weekend when Greg had claimed to be at a critical investor meeting in San Francisco, his credit card showed charges at restaurants and attractions in Portland. Amy's photos from that same weekend showed a family gathering celebrating her parents' 40th wedding anniversary, with Greg prominently featured in many images. While I had been alone on our anniversary, my husband had been celebrating with his family, a family that, according to him, was too toxic to be part of our lives. By midday, I had identified over $100,000 transferred to Greg's business accounts over the past 5 years alone, with little evidence of legitimate business expenses. Instead, his personal credit card statements showed lavish meals, gifts, and contributions to what appeared to be his parents' retirement fund. My hands trembled as I pulled up the county property records website. I entered the address of the supposed Bellevue duplex from the documents Greg had shown me. The property existed, but it wasn't registered to either of us. The current owners were listed as William and Patricia Wilson, Greg's parents. The documents he'd shown me were elaborate forgeries, created to justify the $15,000 withdrawal that had actually funded his portion of the Maui trip, and, apparently, contributions to his parents' investment property. I sat back, physically ill from the magnitude of the deception. Our entire marriage had been built on systematic lies. The businesses that always needed just a little more capital before they could succeed, had they ever existed at all. I logged into the state's business registry and searched for the names of Greg's various ventures over the years. Not a single one had been legally registered. For 10 years, I had been bankrolling not failing businesses, but Greg's secret life with his family, a life that explicitly excluded me. My phone rang, startling me from my investigation. It was Amanda from the office. "Janet? Are you okay? You never miss work." The concern in her voice broke something inside me. I found myself telling her everything: the discovered photos, the financial deception, the decade of lies. "My God, Janet," she whispered when I finished. "This is financial abuse. You need to talk to someone who specializes in this." "I don't even know where to start," I admitted, the enormity of the situation overwhelming me. "My cousin went through something similar with her ex," Amanda said. "Let me call her for the name of her forensic financial specialist and her divorce attorney." The word divorce hung in the air between us. Until that moment, I hadn't explicitly considered ending my marriage. But hearing it spoken aloud crystallized the inevitable conclusion to a decade of betrayal. 3 hours later, I sat across from Beverly Harmon, a financial forensic specialist who specialized in divorce cases. Amanda had pulled strings to get me an emergency appointment, accompanying me for moral support. Beverly reviewed the documentation I'd compiled with a professional detachment that helped steady my emotional turmoil. "This is one of the more straightforward cases of financial infidelity I've seen," she said, finally. "The pattern is consistent and well documented. Based on what you've shown me, your husband has been systematically diverting your income to support his family while deliberately excluding you from their lives." She pulled out a yellow legal pad. "The more troubling aspect is the property document forgery. That crosses the line into potential criminal fraud, especially if he used those documents to justify withdrawals from joint accounts." "What should I do next?" I asked, my accountant's mind seeking a procedural checklist, even as my emotional self remained numb with shock. "Protect your assets immediately," Beverly advised. "Create new accounts in your name only. Transfer your direct deposit. Remove his access to joint credit cards. Document everything before he realizes you've discovered the truth." She passed me the business card of a divorce attorney. "Stephanie Reeves is the best in Seattle for high-conflict cases involving financial deception. I suggest you call her today." As we left Beverly's office, Amanda squeezed my hand. You can stay with me until this is sorted. You shouldn't be alone in that house with all those memories. I shook my head. I need to secure our financial accounts first, and I need to face Greg when he returns. I need to hear him admit what he's done. Amanda looked worried. At least let me come with you. You don't know how he'll react when his deception is exposed. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with another call from Greg. After 27 declined calls, he had finally stopped trying to reach me earlier that day. This renewed attempt suggested he was growing desperate. I answered, putting the call on speaker so Amanda could hear. Janet, finally. I've been worried sick. Greg's voice oozed concern. Are you okay? I'm fine, I replied, my voice flat. Just reviewing some interesting financial records. A pause. What financial records? Property records for a certain duplex in Bellevue. Turns out it's owned by your parents, not us. Interesting, isn't it? The silence that followed was deafening. Janet, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've been explaining things brilliantly for 10 years. You should come home so we can discuss it. I'll be waiting. I ended the call before he could respond. Amanda looked at me with wide eyes. You're not really going to confront him alone, are you? No, I said, a plan forming in my mind. I'm going to secure our finances, contact Stephanie Reeves, and prepare for war. By 7 that evening, I had opened new accounts in my name only, transferred my portion of our savings, redirected my direct deposit, and frozen our joint credit cards. I'd met with Stephanie Reeves, who had immediately filed for emergency financial orders to prevent Greg from emptying our remaining assets. And I had changed the locks on our home. Amanda insisted on staying with me despite my protests. I'm not leaving you alone to face him, she said firmly, ordering dinner for us while I continued gathering financial evidence. Just after 9, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Amanda and I exchanged glances. Greg wasn't due back from Maui for 3 more days. The sound of a key in the lock, followed by confusion and then aggressive pounding. Janet! The key isn't working. Let me in. I took a deep breath and moved toward the door, Amanda close behind me. Through the peephole, I could see Greg tanned from his Hawaiian vacation, expression oscillating between anger and what appeared to be practiced concern. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. You're home early. He pushed past me into the house, then froze when he saw Amanda. What's she doing here? Supporting her friend, Amanda replied coolly. Greg turned to me, ignoring her. Janet, we need to talk privately about this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Greg. I've seen the photos. I've traced the money. I know about the fake businesses, the forged property documents, the family gatherings you've been attending for years without me. His expression shifted rapidly: confusion, then indignation, then something calculating. Those photos are being misinterpreted. My family manipulated me into attending. They've always been jealous of our success, of your career. They wanted to drive a wedge between us. The audacity of his lie would have been impressive if it weren't so insulting. Your mother thanked you for organizing the gatherings, Greg. Like always, she said. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar tell when he was constructing a lie. They forced me to plan things, threatened to cut contact if I didn't. I was trying to protect you from their toxicity, their constant demands for money. Demands for money, I repeated flatly. Like the $15,000 you withdrew to help fund this trip? Or the $100,000 plus you've funneled from our accounts over the years? His eyes darted around the room, likely assessing whether he still had financial access, whether I knew everything or just enough to be dangerous. It's complicated, Janet. My parents lost their retirement savings in a bad investment. They're underwater on their mortgage. I've been helping them while trying to shield you from their problems. By forging property documents? By creating fake businesses? The businesses are real, he insisted. They just haven't been formally registered yet. That's standard practice in the startup world during the development phase. Every word that left his mouth was another lie. I felt oddly detached, as though I were observing a particularly transparent client attempting to explain away discrepancies in their tax filing. I've changed the locks, Greg. I've separated our finances. I've met with a divorce attorney. You need to find somewhere else to stay tonight. His expression darkened. This is my house too. You can't just lock me out. Actually, she can, Amanda interjected. The emergency protective order covers financial assets and property. The locks were changed legally under that order. I hadn't told Amanda about the protective order she had just provided the perfect bluff. Greg's face contorted with rage. You've involved lawyers already? Without even talking to me? After everything I've done for you? Done for me? The cool detachment I'd maintained began to crack. You've stolen from me, lied to me daily for 10 years, excluded me from your family while using my money to fund your participation. My family never wanted you there, he shouted, finally abandoning the pretense. They thought you were cold, money, obsessed, too focused on your career to be part of a real family. I was protecting their feelings by keeping you separate. The words struck like physical blows. For years I'd believed his family was the problem, toxic, judgmental, better kept at a distance. Now I learned that I was the one they'd been told was toxic. That's not true, a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned to find a man in his early 30s standing in the open doorway, athletic build, with the same jawline and eyes as Greg. Even without the family resemblance, I recognized him from Amy's photos. Tyler? I asked, identifying Greg's younger brother. He nodded, stepping inside. I followed Greg from the airport. Figured this confrontation was happening tonight, and you might need backup. Greg's face flushed with fury. What the hell are you doing here? This is between me and my wife. It stopped being just between you two when you spent years lying to the entire family about Janet, Tyler said calmly. Telling us she hated family gatherings, that she thought she was too good for us, that she refused invitations because she was embarrassed by our middle-class lifestyle. I stared at Tyler in disbelief. He told you that? Tyler nodded grimly. For 10 years, every invitation, every holiday, Greg would tell us you were too busy with work or thought family gatherings were beneath you. Mom and Dad were heartbroken, but they kept inviting you both, hoping eventually you'd come. And the money? I asked, barely able to form the words. The contributions to your parents' accounts? Tyler's expression hardened. What contributions? Greg has transferred over $100,000 to accounts I thought were for his businesses. According to his credit card statements, some of that money went to your parents. Tyler shook his head. Our parents are financially comfortable. Dad's retirement package from Boeing was substantial. They've never needed or asked for money. Greg lunged at his brother, shoving him against the wall. Shut up! You've always been jealous of what I built. Tyler easily deflected Greg's attack, gently but firmly restraining him. What you built? You mean the lies you built? The fake persona of the successful entrepreneur? We've all known for years that your businesses were fantasies. We just didn't know you were stealing from your wife to maintain the illusion. Greg broke free and grabbed a crystal vase from the entry table, hurling it against the wall, where it shattered into countless pieces. You don't know anything about my life, about what I've built. His rage was something I'd never witnessed before, a primal, uncontrolled fury that transformed his handsome features into something unrecognizable. This man, whom I'd lived with for a decade, suddenly seemed like a complete stranger. This is who you really are, I said quietly, the final pieces clicking into place. The charming, supportive husband was just as much a fiction as your businesses. Greg turned to me, his expression calculating even through his anger. If you pursue this, I'll destroy you professionally. I'll tell your firm about how you helped me evade taxes. I'll say you were complicit in everything. I have copies of all the financial records, Greg, I replied. Every transfer, every withdrawal, every forged document. If you try to drag Janet's reputation down, You'll be facing criminal charges." Amanda stepped forward, her phone visible. "And I've recorded this entire conversation." Greg looked from Amanda to me to Tyler, realizing he was cornered. "This isn't over," he spat, grabbing his jacket. "You'll regret this, Janet. All of you will." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a framed photo fell from the wall and cracked. In the sudden silence, I found myself facing Tyler, the brother, in law I should have known for 10 years but was meeting for the first time under the most bizarre circumstances. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "If I'd known what he was telling you about us, what he was doing with your money, I would have reached out directly years ago." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. 10 years of my life had been built on an elaborate foundation of lies. My marriage, my understanding of my husband's family, my financial security, all of it constructed from falsehoods so complex that unraveling them would take months, perhaps years. "Thank you for coming," I finally managed, "for telling me the truth." Tyler handed me his phone number written on a business card. "The family should hear the real story from you when you're ready. They've been misled about who you are for too long." After Tyler left, Amanda helped me clean up the broken vase and made us both tea. "What now?" she asked gently. I took a deep breath, feeling both utterly drained and strangely liberated. Now I take back control of my life, one day at a time. That night, sleeping in my own bed while Amanda took the guest room, I realized the depth of Greg's betrayal extended beyond the financial theft and family exclusion. He had stolen a decade of potential relationships with his family, connections that should have been mine as his wife. He had isolated me not because his family was toxic, but because keeping us separate made his deception easier to maintain. More than money, he had stolen possibilities, and that was the theft I wasn't sure I could ever forgive. The next morning brought a new wave of challenges. My phone rang at 7 Martin from the office. "Janet, I hate to disturb you during your sick day, but there's a situation developing that you should be aware of." My stomach clenched. "What kind of situation?" "Greg called the managing partners this morning. He's claiming you've been helping clients evade taxes and embezzling funds from the firm." The room seemed to tilt. Greg had wasted no time making good on his threats. "That's completely false," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know that," Martin replied immediately. "Your work is impeccable, and these accusations are transparent. But the firm has to follow protocol. There will be an internal investigation." An investigation? Even knowing I was innocent, the prospect sent cold fear through my body. Such investigations could last months, derailing careers even when the accused was ultimately cleared. "I understand. I managed. I'll cooperate fully." After hanging up, I called Stephanie Reeves and explained the new development. "He's retaliating," she said. "This is common in high-conflict divorces involving financial misconduct. The good news is that his actions strengthen our case for the emergency financial orders." "The bad news is that my professional reputation is at stake," I replied. "We'll fight this on all fronts," she assured me. "Meanwhile, continue gathering evidence. Anything that documents his deception will help us." I spent the morning securing additional financial records and preparing documentation for the firm's investigation. Amanda returned to work reluctantly, after making me promise to call if Greg returned. Around noon, I discovered Greg's laptop in his home office closet. He must have forgotten it in his haste to get to Maui. I powered it on, unsurprised to find it password protected. After 3 failed attempts with our usual passwords, I tried Wilson Family, and I was in. What I found was more disturbing than I could have imagined. A folder, labeled Exit Strategy, contained detailed plans for liquidating our assets, selling our home, and transferring funds to an account in Belize, a country known for its banking privacy laws and lack of extradition treaties with the United States. The plans were dated just 2 weeks earlier. Greg had been preparing to disappear with our money right around the time he canceled the family trip to Maui. I photographed every document, every spreadsheet, every incriminating email, sending copies to both Stephanie and Beverly. Then, I contacted our bank to place additional security measures on our remaining joint assets. My phone rang again, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Janet Wilson? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? This is Melissa Chen from the cybersecurity team at Patterson and Blake. We've detected unusual access attempts on several client accounts you oversee. Another angle of Greg's attack. He was trying to make it appear that I was compromising client data. I haven't accessed any client accounts since yesterday morning, I said. I've been out sick and haven't logged into the system. The access attempts are coming from your home IP address, Melissa replied. Greg must have set up automated attempts before leaving for the airport. I explained the situation briefly, emphasizing the timing of his threats and the subsequent suspicious activity. I'll come to the office immediately, I told her. We can review the access logs together and determine exactly what's happening. 3 hours later, I sat with Melissa and the firm's head of security, reviewing detailed logs of the access attempts. The evidence was damning not for me, but for Greg. The attempts had indeed come from our home IP address, but the digital fingerprint matched Greg's devices, not mine. These attempts are sophisticated, but traceable, Melissa explained to the security director. The pattern suggests someone trying to plant false evidence rather than actually access data. Can you document all of this for the investigation? I asked. Melissa nodded. Already working on it. We'll have a complete forensic report by tomorrow. As I left the security office, Martin was waiting outside. The partners want to see you, he said grimly. The meeting with the firm's 3 managing partners was tense but not hostile. I presented the preliminary findings from cybersecurity, explained my ongoing divorce proceedings, and outlined Greg's financial deception. We take accusations of impropriety extremely seriously, said Robert Patterson, the firm's founder. But we also stand by our people when they're clearly being targeted unfairly. The investigation will continue, as required by our protocols, added Diane Blake. But you should know that we've also received similar accusations against 6 other senior accountants this morning, all from the same email address, all with similarly vague claims. Greg's scatter-shot approach had undermined his own credibility. By accusing multiple accountants simultaneously, he had revealed his allegations as a vindictive attack rather than legitimate concerns. Thank you for your support, I said sincerely. I understand the need for the investigation and will provide whatever documentation is needed. As I left the partner's office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a message from Patricia Wilson, Greg's mother. Janet, this is Patricia Wilson. Tyler told us what's happening. We are horrified by Greg's behavior and want you to know we never believed the things he said about you. Would you be willing to meet with us? We're still in Seattle. I stared at the message, emotions churning. For 10 years I'd believed my in-laws were judgmental people who wanted nothing to do with me. Now, they were reaching out directly, apparently as shocked by Greg's deception as I was. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, I would appreciate that. When and where? We arranged to meet at their hotel that evening. I spent the intervening hours in a state of nervous anticipation. What would I say to these people who should have been family, but were essentially strangers? How much did they already know about Greg's financial schemes? At 7 sharp, I entered the lobby of the Grand Hyatt downtown. Patricia spotted me immediately, rushing forward with an expression that mingled concern and warmth. Janet, she said, taking my hands in hers. Thank you for coming. Up close, she looked exactly like her social media photos, a well-dressed woman in her early 60s with Greg's eyes and warm smile. Beside her stood William Wilson, tall and distinguished with silver hair and a troubled expression. We had no idea, William said, as we sat in a quiet corner of the hotel restaurant. All these years, Greg told us you were too busy for family gatherings, that you found them tedious and preferred to focus on your career. And we believed him, Patricia added, her voice heavy with regret. We should have reached out directly, but Greg insisted it would only create tension in your marriage. He told me your family was toxic, I said quietly, that you criticized his business ventures and judged our lifestyle. Later, he claimed you had health issues, that family gatherings were stressful and complicated. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. We've been nothing but supportive of Greg's ideas, even when they seemed impractical. We never judged either of you, we just wanted to be part of your lives. What about the money? I asked, the accountant in me needing to follow every thread. Greg transferred large sums that appear to have gone into accounts with your names. William looked genuinely shocked. We've never received money from Greg. In fact, we've offered to help them financially several times, but he always refused, saying you were both doing extremely well. As we continued talking, the full picture of Greg's deception emerged from both sides. He had created entirely separate narratives for his wife and his family, playing on everyone's trust while methodically draining my finances to maintain an illusion of success. He used the money to appear successful to us, William realized. The expensive gifts, picking up checks for family dinners, offering to cover costs for reunions, he was using your money to look like the successful entrepreneur he claimed to be. While telling me he needed the funds for business expenses, I added. Patricia reached across the table to squeeze my hand. We're so sorry, Janet. If we had known... You couldn't have known, I assured them. Greg's manipulation was comprehensive and calculated. By the end of our 3-hour conversation, I felt a strange mix of grief and connection. These people should have been my family for the past decade. Instead, we were meeting as victims of the same elaborate con, piecing together the truth from our separate experiences of Greg's lies. As we prepared to leave, Patricia hesitated, then asked, Would you consider staying in touch? Not for Greg's sake, but because we've lost 10 years of knowing you. We'd like the chance to be the family you were denied. The request was unexpected, but touching. I think I'd like that, I replied honestly. Right now everything's chaotic with the divorce and the financial investigations, but once things settle, we'll be here, William assured me. Whatever you need. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the strange turn my life had taken. In just a few days, I had lost a husband, but potentially gained the family I'd been told didn't want me. The betrayal remained painful, the financial damage severe, but for the first time, I glimpsed a path forward that wasn't defined by Greg's deception. The months that followed were among the most challenging of my life. Greg disappeared after our confrontation, withdrawing the remaining funds from his personal accounts before the divorce filing could freeze them. His financial trail led to Mexico initially, then vanished, though his social media remained active with carefully filtered images suggesting a lavish lifestyle. The firm's investigation cleared me completely, with the cybersecurity team's report providing irrefutable evidence that Greg had attempted to frame me for financial improprieties. Martin went further, assigning me to lead a new internal task force examining the firm's security protocols. Turn this nightmare into a professional opportunity, he suggested. Help us ensure no one can ever successfully pull off what your husband attempted. The divorce proceedings moved forward despite Greg's absence. Stephanie Reeves proved worth every penny of her considerable fees, securing court orders to freeze any discovered assets and documenting the extensive financial fraud. The judge is highly sympathetic to your case, she informed me, after one particularly productive hearing. The combination of financial abuse and identity fraud makes this a clear-cut situation legally, even without Greg present to defend himself. 6 months after discovering Greg's betrayal, I received an unexpected call from Tyler. You need to see this, he said without preamble. Greg's trying to return to the country. He sent an email to the entire family, claiming you've destroyed his devices remotely and are monitoring his communications. That's absurd, I replied. I've had no contact with him since he left. We know that, Tyler assured me. But he's escalating. The email included personal information about family members, account numbers, passwords, private communications. He's threatening to release everything publicly unless we help him return and clear his name. I immediately contacted Stephanie, who added the new threats to our legal filings and notified the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, which had opened a case following the discovery of Greg's offshore accounts. 2 days later, federal agents arrested Greg at Miami International Airport as he attempted to enter the country using a passport under his middle name. The combination of financial fraud, identity theft, and interstate threats had elevated his case to federal jurisdiction. The arrest brought a wave of media attention. Local business publications ran stories with headlines like "Seattle Executive Arrested in Elaborate Fraud Scheme and Financial Double Life Exposed," a cautionary tale. My name was mentioned in several articles despite Stephanie's best efforts to maintain my privacy. Rather than hiding from the publicity, I made a bold decision. With the firm's blessing, I established a specialized division within Patterson and Blake, focused on identifying and preventing financial abuse in personal and business relationships. "You've lived it, you've fought it, and you've overcome it," Martin said when I proposed the idea. "There's no one better qualified to help others navigate these waters." The Wilson family now, my family in a way they never had been during my marriage, provided unwavering support throughout the process. Patricia and William attended court hearings, standing symbolically by my side. Amy and her husband invited me to family gatherings that no longer excluded me. Tyler introduced me to his fiancée, joking that I was the sister-in-law he'd always heard about but never met. 1 year after discovering Greg's deception, I stood in a federal courtroom as the judge delivered his verdict. Greg had been found guilty on 27 counts of fraud, identity theft, and interstate transmission of threats. The sentence: 12 years in federal prison and restitution exceeding $2 million, covering not just my losses, but those of several other victims who had come forward during the investigation. As I left the courthouse, Stephanie walked beside me, both of us ignoring the reporters calling questions from behind the barricade. "How does it feel?" she asked quietly. I considered the question carefully, like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The settlement from my divorce included not just the recovery of documented funds Greg had stolen, but substantial punitive damages awarded by a judge who described the case as one of the most comprehensive examples of financial marital abuse this court has encountered. With those funds, I made 3 significant investments: a donation to establish a foundation supporting victims of financial abuse, seed funding for my new division at the firm, now formalized as the Financial Relationship Integrity Team, and a beautiful beachfront property on Whidbey Island, a place entirely my own, unburdened by memories of my marriage. The home became a sanctuary, a physical representation of my recovery and independence. Floor, 2, ceiling windows overlooked the Puget Sound, the open layout and modern design reflecting the transparency and clarity I now demanded in all aspects of my life. 18 months after discovering Greg's lies, I hosted my first Wilson family gathering at my beach house. Patricia and William, Tyler and his now wife, Amy, and her husband and children, the family I should have known for a decade, welcomed me as one of their own, creating new memories to replace those that had been stolen. Standing on my deck that evening, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me financially, professionally, emotionally. Yet through that crucible of pain, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and built a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one built on Greg's lies. My new role at the firm had already helped dozens of clients identify and escape financially abusive relationships. The foundation was providing emergency assistance and legal support to victims without my financial resources. And my relationship with the Wilson family had blossomed into something genuine and nurturing, a connection based on shared experience and mutual respect rather than obligation. The luxury of my new life wasn't just in the beautiful home or financial security, though both were significant. The true luxury was in the freedom. Freedom from deception, from manipulation, from the exhausting work of supporting someone who took everything and gave nothing in return. "Beautiful evening," Patricia said, joining me at the railing. "Perfect," I agreed. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when William and I were dealing with the aftermath of Greg's actions, we kept asking ourselves where we went wrong as parents. What did we miss? How could we have raised someone capable of such calculated deception?" I turned to look at her. "Have you found an answer?" She shook her head. "Not really. Some people just choose a dark path, regardless of their upbringing. But watching you rebuild your life after what he did, that's helped us heal. You've shown us that even the worst betrayal doesn't have to define your future." Her words resonated deeply. The pain of Greg's betrayal would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the defining chapter. I had transformed that pain into purpose, that loss into learning, that ending into a new beginning. As the family gathered for dinner around the large table on my deck, I looked at the faces of these people who had been kept from me for so long. Their laughter, their stories, their genuine affection. These were the riches I had been denied, while financially supporting the very person who excluded me. "I'd like to make a toast," William said, raising his glass. "To Janet, who turned a terrible situation into something beautiful and meaningful. You've shown all of us what resilience truly looks like." As glasses clinked and warm smiles surrounded me, I felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. The journey from betrayal to freedom had been arduous, but the destination, this moment, this life I had reclaimed and rebuilt, was worth every painful step along the way. The greatest lesson I learned through it all was simple yet profound. Our value isn't determined by those who betray us, but by how we choose to rise above that betrayal. My husband's lies cost me 10 years and over $100,000. But they ultimately led me to a freedom and luxury no amount of money could buy. The luxury of living authentically, surrounded by genuine connections and meaningful purpose. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something positive in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes our most painful experiences become the foundation for our greatest growth. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that there is light beyond betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity on your own path to authentic happiness.